Oh, excuse me. Om Samano Mantra Samiti Samani Samanang Manasahachitamesham Samani Vaakuti Samana Hridayani Va Samanamastu Manoyata Vasu Sahasati Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. That's it. Common be your prayer. Common be your end. Common be your purpose. Common be your deliberation. Common be your desires. Common, unified be your hearts. Unified be your intentions. Perfect be the union amongst you. Om peace, peace, peace. Good morning, everyone. The subject is why we suffer. Not a very happy subject, is it? But hopefully, before the end, maybe we'll have some new insights, or rather some old insights as to the nature of what causes our suffering and how to minimize it. That's my goal for today. So our prayers for peace, our prayers for unity, for common understanding, they all come due to the lack of these things in our lives. We wouldn't pray for them if we were all having an abundance of these things. We pray for what is lacking in us, or what is wanted, what's missing in our life. Does anybody pray for suffering? Nobody wants to suffer. Nobody wants to suffer. Everyone wants to be happy. But the majority of humanity seems to have not found their happiness. Every day this world goes on, what are people doing? Some are brooding. Some are in a rush to be wherever they are not right now. They're always thinking in the future or brooding about the past. Nobody's living in the present moment very much. Children are better at that. They're right there doing something now, thinking about what they're doing. But in this modern world where people want to be made right, we want to be corrected, as it were, through whatever means to make us better people. Half the people I know are go for therapy now, and because what is therapy? You're going to talk to someone about what you don't want probably your friends to know. You only tell your therapist what you tell your therapist, and that's a bond, so we understand between the two. Why? Why do we need that therapy? Why do we need to hear ourselves talk? The therapist hears us talk, and we hear ourselves talk. Maybe some good comes from it in that you will actually hear the words that come out of your mouth, and your attempt to find solutions to your problems. And your problems are what create an ongoing suffering. So many go day to day living in a high level of anxiety. To be able to maintain that tension. Anxiety means not right with the world, not right with myself, not right maybe with my friends, not right enough so that I need to find what's wrong. I need to find a solution. Will a therapist help me find a solution? They just listen to you. Some of them offer maybe practical suggestions. So this thing we call suffering, it can be hard to, it covers a very wide range of mental disturbances. Our mind is disturbed. It's not at peace. It's if there's a concern that bothers us, whether we're busy working to solve the peace for the world peace, the world problems, we do spend a lot of time there. This is the solution. This is what we have to do, or the need for that, because maybe the world is scaring us as it is today. Countries are threatening each other and fighting with each other. This general unrest and negative unrest. The mind, by its nature, is always going to be a bit restless unless we have learned some techniques to basically ignore its concerns, put them aside. What's happening right now, that's more important. We don't need to spend too much time every day trying to figure out how to make the outside world perfect. For those of you who are a little older, who have a few years of life experience under their belt, and believe me, it does make a difference. If you're 20, or if you're 30, or if you're 40 or 50, or if you're 60, 70, or 80, where the teeter-totter has tipped the other way, and your day-to-day is preparing yourself for your departure. That's not a normal thing normally to do in your young life. As a monk, as a monastic, and even as non-monastics, those who are familiar with our order and our tradition and our teachings, contemplating our demise, our death, is not a morbid subject. It's just a fact that someday we will, if we don't think about it when we're younger, and as we age and as we get older, if we don't think about it at all, we're not going to be at all ready for it. And the problem with that is that we don't know when we will be called, when we will go. Either we're called away or we call ourselves away. The body self implodes, can happen at an early age. We can have an accident. We all know lots of people who aren't here anymore. So the one thing for sure is, if we're going to prepare for anything in this world, it makes a lot of sense to me to prepare ourselves for our final departure, particularly because we don't know how much time we have. The interesting thing about that is that everybody, whether they're younger or older, feels we've got more time. Tomorrow will come, probably next week will come, probably next month will come. Even people with a terminal illness, they have their calendar countdown clock, and they're not thinking about that final day usually, because they're going to live today. Often having some intimation of your impending departure can inspire you to be more alive with every single day we have left. Now, to me, when I think about that, that sounds like a good idea anyway. To be more inspired to live every day. How do we live it differently if we know, let's say we're not in great physical pain or totally disabled yet, but if we know, oh, you've got this illness will give you 1 year, but you'll be fine until the very end. What would we do? There's something to think about. What would we change about how we work, how we think, our thoughts and beliefs about the nature of our worldview? Are people good? Are people bad? Are people good and bad? Is the world a good place? Is the world a bad place? Or none of that? When I say none of that, how can we think of none of that? I just think of my mom. She's 100 years old now. She's in a nursing home, spends time in bed, spends most of the day dressed in a wheelchair, looking at the fish tank. And I've asked her, what do you think about? Do you think about what's going to come? You're 100 years old now. Oh, I'm 100 years old? No. Yeah, you're 100 years old. She doesn't spend any concern about being 100 years old. I've asked, do you think about what's coming next? My aunt lived to 98. That's her sister. She passed away some years ago. I said, do you see her? She said, not anymore. I'm not sure what she meant by that. I think sometimes when people depart, we are thinking of them all the time if they're newly departed and they're very dear to our hearts. But to live day to day without the one thing I admire about my mom, she's not anxious about anything. She's not particularly eager to live forever or to leave anytime soon. She has no complaints about the nursing home and the care. She's got a lot of gratitude for all the care they give her. She's actually appreciating that people will look after her. I envy that, I have to say. I have my doubts. Who will look after me? Who will look after us? Her arrangements were made thanks to a nice bestowment from her sister. But for most of us, even if we had that, our minds are still anxious. Our minds are busy. And we'll find some way or other if we have a habit of being anxious, of worrying about things, those habits are self-perpetuating. And they don't actually add much positive, they don't help us in our life. I don't know if any of you are book readers and all, but I recently finished an audiobook by Eckhart Tolle. He's a famous name, a famous German spiritual teacher. Spiritual teacher, no mention of God. He does mention the soul of people, the soul, the mind. But his non-religious way of coming to the same conclusion that we come to in Vedanta really just astounded me. His book was written in 1996. I'm not advertising for him, but The Power of Now. If anybody of you are around my age or even younger, you probably know of that book. I'm sure it was a New York Times bestseller for years and years, because his method of convincing us, the reader, that much of our life is insanity, as he puts it. What we call normal living, normal thinking, busying ourselves with our mundane life as we do, our job, our work, our family situations, all the little stuff and all the big stuff, much of the time, he calls it insanity. Why? It's madness. Why should it be called madness? That's what everybody does. Because everybody does it doesn't make it sane, I could say. The majority in the crowd is not always the right. There's always a few wise guys in the crowd who stand out on the top and write books like that, or they're sages or swamis or holy men, a few special people, and they have a lot of things in common, all of them. One of the things usually is their mind has, to some extent, come under their own control. Rather than reacting to the world, they act in the world. The terminology, the wording of Eckhart Tolle to say that normal people, he also calls them unconscious, how people live their life unconsciously, I can relate to it. How many of you remember your drive here and all the incidents of driving? I had to drive 45 minutes from Arlington, of course, to get here. And most of the time I'm thinking about something else. I'm on autopilot. Even there's a part of me that's always alert. If something goes wrong, someone's going to cut me off. We all have that. But I'm in a car and I'm driving, I'm speeding down the highway with everyone else. But I've done it so many times before. I'm driving out of habit. And I'm thinking, what will I talk about in the talk? I worked it out this morning. I was too busy yesterday to even take a moment. But this unconscious living, I can see it, and I think we can all see it when we look at other people sometimes. It's so much easier for us to see others going around like automatons, but we don't necessarily think we're doing that ourselves. Nah. I know what I'm about. I know what I'm doing. I know what's coming next. I know what I'm preparing for. And those are the reasons that Eckhart Tolle says we're unconscious, or that we're living insane. Because why? The title of his book is The Power of Now. living in the moment now. Every moment is always passing. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, our mind perceives this thing called time. So we have a past. We talk about the present, but I wonder how much we know about it because it never lasts. And then there's the future. The future is full of our hopes and dreams. And it's also full of our fears and loathings. I'm going camping. I hope I don't see any snakes. Or I hope there's no wild animals to bother me. And what about the mosquitoes and the bugs? Now, camping, all of a sudden, the idea of sleeping out in the mountains by a river stream has some negative values to it. And yet, being able to see the stars at night, you can't do it in the city. They don't show up. There's too much light pollution. Everything has its pros and cons. So if we're all living unconsciously or automatically, what's the alternative for us? How can we stay ever present in the present? And yet, as this really smart guy, Eckhart Tolle, points out, nothing happens in the past, and nothing happens in the future. Take that in. Nothing happens. We have a past. We call it history. We all have our personal history. We have our idea of what is our world history or our global history or our town history. But nothing happens then. It's done. You can't live in the past. You can think about it. You can study it. You can brood about it. If it was better than your current situation in the present, we may like to remember it was so much better before. Then again, I've learned when we look into our memories and we study them closely, and we actually go back to, oh yeah, we did this family vacation, or we did this camping, or we're left with a general idea of togetherness, happiness, everybody was having a good time. Really? Somebody's arguing, somebody's fighting, somebody's hungry, somebody needs this, somebody needs that. When we actually pull back all the memories in their completeness, and not the way we wanted to store them in our memory shelf as good times, okay times, forgetful times, horrible times, never do this again. We have that shelf in our memory shelf. We are not in the present moment again. We're thinking about anything except what's happening right now while our life is fleeting by. Again, this idea that things only happen now. So what we want, what dreams we have, what wishes, what hopes, what fulfillments we want to bring forward in our lifetime, they only happen now. You might say, it's not a revelation. We know, we have to do that. But I equate this idea of being present in the moment to having a clear and focused mind. A mind that if you want to get something accomplished, I think we all know people, maybe they're better at getting things done than we are, maybe, or we're amazed at their ability to stay focused and achieve a goal. Some people want a better job, and they're doing that. They're putting all their attention into working into conditions that are better than what they had. They always pay more anyway. I also know that we're thinking, oh, I've got coworkers I don't want to work with. Let me change my company. in every company, we may end up with coworkers we don't want to work with. So we don't know what's going to happen there. But the idea that we are actively doing the things that will bring about a change from our past. And why do we want to bring a change from our past? Because we're not content. We're not satisfied. That lack of satisfaction is a background suffering. It's kind of like in astronomy, they say the universe makes a sound, some background noise is there or something. It's kind of like that. In life, in the world, in your being, there's a background dissatisfaction that no matter what you've done, no matter how much progress forward, how much success forward, be it with family matters, be it with job, be it with your personal growth plan or your therapy plan. I wonder if people have a beginning and an end for their therapy plan. When do I no longer need to see my therapist? The therapist, I have a hunch, doesn't have an end date for your visits because that is his life. And he's probably quite focused on keeping his job. When we realize that dissatisfaction that tends to, for me in my life, my best phrase is, if I've been wanting to do something and it's taken a long time and I finally got to do it, and then the thought, is that all there is to this? I thought it was going to be better than that. Maybe it was something out, climbing a mountain, scaling the peak. You get to the top. When you're young, you still have some energy, enough energy to get back down. When you're old, I'm exhausted. Now I have to get all the way back down and back to the car or whatever. But that feeling, is that all there is? Oh, got a job promotion. Okay, they've maybe even have a new office. You may even have a corner office. And then you get used to it. And nothing has changed about that general dissatisfaction. Does everybody have it? In general, we're going to say yes. There may be a few, what we call illumined souls or enlightened beings. They're not dissatisfied. They don't have an expectation that something external, a change in how they live, a change in what they own, a change in what they do will bring them happiness. We look and work to get happy in all the wrong places because happiness isn't found that way. What is this happiness? If you're over 40 or 50, we often use the word happiness just to cover a break of suffering. We call that happiness, some peace in between the storms. If we have health issues, lifelong health issues, those can come at any time. They can come at 20 years old or 30 years old. And like Velcro, they hang around for the rest of your life. No therapist, no doctor seems to be able to fix things to make me good so I don't have any health problems. Let me have health problems when I'm 80 or 90 if I live that long. Or if I'm only going to live to 70, let them come at 65 to 70 or 69 and a half to 70 is better. Let it be fast and quick. But nothing external brings satisfaction that way. As we try to do more things to get more things, trending vocabulary is invest in experiences, life experiences. Put your money where your memories are. Okay, so you want to be able to remember that you were happy in that moment. You have to go back and remember it. Or should you put your mental focus and concentration? I always liked the word mindfulness. I think I learned that when I first came to Vedanta, and it's been my pet fond word. Mindfulness means paying attention to the present moment. Not thinking about the past and not thinking about the future. Because only when we become mindful in the moment, even to fulfill your mundane duties, desires, we will be busy doing all those things. We're not going to stop doing all the things it takes to maintain embodiment. The one thing nobody's very eager for here, we're all embodied beings, is to end our embodiment. We know what that means. And that's part of the background dissatisfaction of suffering, is knowing that it ends sometime. Happens. It's going to happen. Is it possible then, while we're here, to live in the present with a mind that stays more focused in what you need to do right now? Right now, I need to give a talk, and hopefully you need to listen. And if I'm not going to waste both of our time, something I say should be of value to you. And the only thing that will make me feel good about this talk is thinking that something I said was of value. But that value should be, can you put it to practice? Which is always the question for me. Can I put it to practice every day or every part of every day? Having to remind myself to stay present to get things done. I have a lot to get done. I'm taking care of the retreat. I do a lot of physical work and a lot of mundane work, just so it looks like a park when you come up and visit up there. And it's going pretty well. This is the dry time of year. Things are drying up. There's a few flowers still blooming in the fall, and I give them my attention. The flowers that are finished blooming, oh, I like this. Guess what what I've done with them? They're chopped off and they're tossed into the woods. That takes some work too, but I'm done with them. Next spring, if I'm still here and able to work, will I repeat that same useless thing? Yeah, I will. Because guess what people do when they have everything in life? They have lots of money, they have a few houses, they have recreation. They start doing their own gardening. They fire the gardener, they retire, and they start spending quiet time in Mother Nature, getting a suntan. No, I don't use sunscreen. I'll pay the price. Breathing the air. Looking at the bugs, avoiding getting stung by other bugs. They seem to understand. I'm not going to hurt them. You leave me alone too. Now and then we run into each other and they get me and I get them. But that's how that goes. I love my time in the garden whether I'm chopping away the old and the dead, clearing it out, this universe, creation, maintenance or sustenance, and then dissolution. All these three things play out as my life as a gardener every day. And all three things are happening every day. The spring stuff is all done and gone. The summer stuff is gone pretty much because it was so hot and dry. Only what I could get water to has tried to keep going, thinking it's still got a chance. And the fall stuff is starting to show up, which is quite a bit out there that becomes, what, colorful. Yes, it's a big sensory thing, but for me, it's a way to pass my time. What am I going to do? Sometimes I just stop work and go sit on the raft. Look at the lake. We have a nice raft that just floats on the shore. You can step right on it. There's a couple chairs there. You can sit and stop everything. Get yourself a slice of bread. You can bring the fish, even the turtle, if the otter doesn't eat everything. I think we have an otter too. Every few days he keeps reminding, I'm here, I'm eating fish and crawfish and other things. Now, sometimes I get a little upset. I got to get rid of that otter. 20 years ago or so, 2 otters ate everything in our lake. That was and it was that where our duty and job was to keep our lake full of whatever, fish and ecolife. But the otter's duty of life was to feed my kids, so they bring their kids, and eat everything they could. And that includes frogs and crayfish and most of the fish. And then our duty is again to maybe put some more fish back and let the others figure out. But you know what? Whether we do something or whether we do nothing, all of that keeps happening with or without our participation. That's something I realized later in life. I think that idea didn't come to me until I spent more time in India. In India, there tends to be a tendency for people to know how to actually relax. I'm the only one with the wrinkled forehead at 30 or 40 years old with tension lines. And when I went for my sannyas and spent lots of time with brother monks, everybody looks so happy. Of course they're happy. They're going to be taking their final vows. Well, I'm doing that too, but I've got a little nervousness and going, how does that take place? And a lot of the instruction is in Bengali. And just the minimum stuff would have to be translated for me. I'm the only white guy there, so who knows only English. So the necessary stuff was translated for me. So out of these 13 days, only a couple minutes of only English for me was necessary. What were they talking about for the rest of the time in Bengali? Because there were classes every night going on for a long time. And I needed a 5-minute refresher course. I guess that's what I'm giving you, the refresher course of learning to live in the present moment. I want to finish that story. When I was there, it dawned on me. Everyone is so relaxed here. We're all going to be in the same big ceremony that will change our life. We go from being brahmacharis, probation or not probation or monastics, but novices for many years. In our order, you have to be a novice. It's not just a few years or a few months. It's not like army boot camp. You got to live your life for a good 9-10 years before you even think about taking that final vow. So it's a big thing for all of us. And yet everybody's just happy and relaxed. And I realized, you've got to go with the flow here and stop planning. I knew that I'd have some plans, some maybe, what will I do then? Or I'm thinking about the future. I was going to, because I'm not going to be in India long. They're going to go back to their centers and serve in India. But we would get some travel time. But I wasn't really thinking about that too much either. I was just a little anxious, and we were all underslept. We get about 4 hours of sleep a night. Anyway, it changed the way I thought about relaxing a little bit. If the alternate is spending time in nervous contemplation about something that may or may not ever happen, or dreading, or wondering what did happen, and how it's ruined me or wrecked me. My earlier life, my parents weren't good enough, my siblings traumatized me, all of this kind of stuff. Still looking for excuses why I don't like myself today. That won't work. That won't work either. No, the first thing we have to do is make friends with the guy inside. Everybody, I think if a therapist told everybody, everything is okay, and the person that you are is okay too. Just accept everything right now, however it appears to you, as okay. Accept it. It is what it is. That's a common phrase, but that is a very profound phrase. If it is what it is, it's not going to change, particularly if you're trying to fix something in the past. I mean, I don't know if that's what therapists do. You can only make changes now as far as fix. Okay, I was doing it that way for 20 years, thinking in this mode. Can I really change such an old habit? Well, for 20 years, you made that habit, that bad way of thinking, that bad way of self-perceiving. Most of us have at least one or two friends, so somebody likes us. We can't be that bad. So if we're self-condemners, I've known people in my life that they cannot but hate themselves due to their loathing of what they imagine. They imagine themselves to be. Their friends think they're a whole lot. They don't even see that in them. And yet we've somehow found the facility to go so deeply with why I am damaged goods to, need to deal with it the rest of our life. Come on, don't waste your time. Move on. People lose a leg by many ways, and they keep moving on. And some you would never know that they've lost a leg. They lose parts of limbs and things. And some people, they reinvent themselves as a disabled person who can never overcome that. And I have watched my pastime, my guilty pastime is actually watching various YouTube stuff of people who do stuff. I like to watch builders and things. And there's a builder who recently sawed off all the fingers of his left hand. Now, for a builder, that's a big deficit because you need both of these to work. And they build homes. He actually ran one of his videos because all of a sudden we see him, he's missing for a while, and then he comes back and his hand's all wrapped up, and he actually had to he did a video explanation because he's a big YouTuber, saying what happened, which was relatively gruesome enough. A machine pulled his hand and lost most maybe he had that much. But now, we're going on 2 years afterwards. He's got this amazing little metal fitment that not only is he not a handicapped person? He's doing almost everything. This is not a mechanical motorized apparatus. It's just extensions off of what part of the finger might have been left. And he's working like all the rest of the crew, doing this, doing that, shoveling gravel, hammering stuff. And he's a detail man, finessing. And he's using both his hands. He's completely overcome his so-called disability. It's not even recognizable as being disabled anymore. If that can happen, why are we so intent on wrecking it for ourselves? In some cases, not saying that everybody does that, but that tendency to do it at all is something to lose, because it'll only get worse. Yes, it can get worse if we continue. If we've had a habit of doing something in a certain way, the way we think about it, for the last 20 years, we can have a new habit for the next 20 years. But only if we want to, and only if we realize that we should, or that we want to make some changes. If we really are okay with the way things are, and how we think, how we view the world, our worldview, my self-view, no more growth is needed, no more learning is needed. If we've reached that point, we're good too, believe it or not. We're probably almost happy, as close as you can come to happy in life. Now and then I meet other cheerful people on earth. Their nature is cheerfulness. And a lot of people, what's wrong with them? He's always happy. Or she. Doesn't matter. What are they hiding? Maybe they're just somehow discovered not to learn all the techniques that many of us have already learned that make ourselves miserable. The self-criticism techniques that went too far. It's okay to look at ourselves, and everybody has an asset side and a deficit side. If we had perfect qualities, normally we're not born in this plane. We're not going to show up on earth. So everybody has the good and the bad. That's common. So that's a common shared thing. It requires no specific analysis other than if you really don't like what you see, and you realize, I can change that, I can stop thinking like that, I can stop behaving like that. My friends find me annoying. Why? What do I do? What do I say? Or is it what I'm talking about? We get our feedback from friends, so-called friends, if they care. If they don't care, they're not going to say anything to us. Those are acquaintances. So it is possible to discover our dissatisfaction. Ultimately, our dissatisfaction comes from something else. That's another talk. It's because we want freedom. The souls that embody these human vehicles, they are free by their nature. I'm talking about us. The very core of your inner being is fully free. So what's it doing, having made up this faulty personality like an onion skin with negative qualities or elements? Well, we're not that conscious when we're embodied. That inner being that's in all of us, that witness, doesn't remember itself all the time. That's our big mistake. We forget that that's there. That witness is still watching everything we say, do, think, act. That inner self is not needing anything. It is free. It has no lack. And that is equally present in every one of us. I've gone past my 45 minutes talk time. That idea of freedom is the only idea of freedom I can keep in my mind anymore. The idea that we are actually free. Swami Vivekananda told in various places, if you can believe, if you can not believe, but understand that you are free, you become free this very instant. And that's true. Who becomes free? What becomes free? Is it your personality that now can do anything it wants to? No, that's not the understanding. It's a deeper understanding, a deeper sense of what being, that sense of being, that inner witness, that witness, as it were, it's like a tape recorder or a video recorder that's always going, it's always witnessing everything we do, everything we think, everything we say. You know it's there, you can feel it, we've known it since we were children. That thing has never gone away. And yet we live like it doesn't exist anymore because we become forgetful of that. Just by thinking about that idea of the self, it's nicely described in our books in Vedanta, it's described in the Hindu scriptures. Just thinking about, reading about that, lifts the mind to a higher level instantly. Makes us feel happy thinking about the idea of freedom because that is our nature. Every part of this life, this embodied life, has limitations. No matter how little or great those limitations. And those limitations come through what the body can do. Not everybody gets a strong body. Not everybody gets a healthy body. So there's a big limitation. The same thing with the mind. You may ask, but we're our mind, aren't we? That's where our personality is. That's where my I am is. No. The I am is in some other place or no place at all, because the I am can watch your mind also. Your I am, that witness, is always watching your mind. How do we get to meet that inner self? It's always there. The secret is that it's not a secret. It's not a mystery. We just ignore it. We just don't think about it. And we go on living, as Eckhart Tolle would say, unconsciously, in insanity. Do we have an option? Can we hybridize it somehow? Can I still, the problem is, as long as we still even want a little enjoyment through our senses, through our embodiment of this world, and we do, I can assure you, you do, as long as we want to enjoy some part of it, a good meal, a nice drive, good sunset, good food, good company, good conversation, good books, it's still all external. It's like, what, are we missing those things? Or we know it will come in the future. If we live another day, I will meet someone and get another good conversation in. I will find that there are another book that I might enjoy. As long as we have even a trace of the feeling of lack within us. Because the personality in the mind is always going to be lacking. Your bucket list is never going to be big enough to create an ego that big and that accomplished. That will be the creator of the universe's job. It's not our job. We are the beings who come and go and try it over and over, like a bug colony, as it were, a colony of ants and bees. Where do they go and come and go? They work as a community. We work as a community. We're the bugs of planet Earth. But at least in Vedanta, we think we're more than that. We can call out our body and mind. Okay, so 5 minutes are there. I'm going to give, are there any questions online that anybody might have, if there are? Otherwise, I'm giving those of you who took the trouble to make it here in person first dibs. So from what all I said, do you have any questions that need clarifying? If there's no questions, then I'm going to understand that you've got it all, or you've got none of it, or you don't know what to do with it. Yes? One question.
It's like the talk that we did also, and it's like, it has brought a real peace to me in reading the Vedanta and all this thing. But strong questions keep on coming to the mind, okay, accepting all these things. So what purpose my life is making now? That question always remains like, okay, life is anyhow time that I have. Maybe 30 years more or 50 years more, I don't know. But what is going to come out of that? I mean, anyhow, I'm like, okay, I look to you, you have a purpose in your life. You are into the spiritual life, promoting Vedanta. But when I look towards myself, or if I look, like, let's say 30 years forward, working for Amazon, helping people to do the shopping, or enticing them to do the shopping, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, so for that reason, like, particularly, like, how do we reflect upon that?
So ultimately, we need to think about a little more deeply, I think. The question is about the purpose of life. The question is the purpose of life. If you read a little of Vedanta of Ramakrishna anyway, he makes it so easy for us. The purpose of life is to know God, is to know the divinity within. Whether Amazon shopping and all will help us to know that, it lets me stay home and I don't have to go to the store, and maybe I can read a Vedanta book because I can just go to the mailbox and get the next thing I need for the retreat. But ultimately, each individual will have to come to his own idea about what will you do with your life? Is there an ultimate purpose in life? For me, that thought came when I was in my 20s. I had not come to Vedanta or anything. But I looked at the life of my parents. You know, people fall in love or lust, they get married, and kids are there, and you've got a family, and you've got the rest of your life obliged to make them survive in the world. Is that the purpose of life, is what I asked myself. I was still young and free and unattached to no one. And I could not, I looked at it that way, even from a Western point of view. Getting married, begetting children, is that all there is? Or getting rich and having... There has to be something more. In my entire life, the only way I can answer that question was only Vedanta answered that question for me. Sri Ramakrishna made it very simple because it answered it for everyone. He says emphatically, the purpose of human birth is to realize God. What does that mean? It can be interpreted differently, whether we're talking about our inner self or the Creator, the one who put us here, the avatar. It's a really good question, and it's sincere, and you have the next 30 years to work on it. We're past time, so I'm going to close with a chant, if we're still on. And it will be the same chant I began with. Om samano mantra samiti samani samanam manasaha chittamesham amani va akuti samana hridayani vaha samanamastu vo mano yatha vasu sahasati. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. And I want to say the prayer in English. Common be your prayer. Common be your end. Common be your purpose. Common be your deliberation. Common be your desires. Unified be your hearts. United be your intentions. Perfect be the union amongst you. Om. Peace. Peace.